I mastered English in 5 easy steps.
Hello, my name is Tina. When I first moved to an English-speaking country, I was excited, but also scared. I didn't know many words in English, and I had trouble understanding people when they spoke. One day, I was at a store trying to buy some bread. I didn't know how to ask for it. I stood there, looking at the bread, and thought, I need to learn the words for things like bread, milk, and fruit. These are the words I need to know first. That day, I made a decision. I would learn the most common words people use every day. I started with simple words that I could use in many situations. Words like hello, goodbye, please, thank you, food, drink, and water. I also made sure I learned words for basic things around me like house, car, family, and work. This was the first step on my journey to fluency. The next day, I went to a cafe and tried to order coffee. It was hard because I didn't know the word for coffee. I pointed at the menu and said, "This one, please." The server smiled, but I knew I needed to learn the words for things like coffee, tea, and bread if I wanted to feel confident. So, I studied every day. I made flashcards, I practiced with my friends, and soon I could order food at a restaurant or ask for directions. Learning those simple words gave me the confidence to keep going. Even though I didn't know everything, I knew enough to start communicating, and that made me feel good. Step 2. I built my listening skills. For step 2, I worked on improving my listening skills. So, after learning basic vocabulary, I realized something very important. I needed to practice listening if I wanted to speak better English. So, I made a plan to listen to English every day. One evening, I was sitting in my apartment when I decided to listen to short stories in English. At first, I didn't understand much because the words were spoken so fast. But I didn't give up. I listened to the story again, and this time, I turned on the subtitles. I started to notice something interesting. Even if I didn't understand every word, I could hear words I already knew. For example, in one scene, the actor said, "I'm going to the store." I knew store because I had learned that word in step 1. The more I listened, the more I recognized words and phrases I already knew. Slowly, I started to understand what the characters were saying. One day, I was on the bus, and I heard 2 people talking in English. I didn't understand everything, but I could pick out the words I knew. I heard one person say, "Where is the supermarket?" And I understood that. I felt proud of myself. I had learned how to pick out words, even in fast conversations. Listening helped me understand how people really speak, how they use short words like I'm, your, and it's in everyday talk. It also helped me get used to hearing different accents and speeds of speaking. I started listening to songs in English too. At first, it was hard, but I learned a lot by repeating the songs and hearing the words many times. Step 3. Practice speaking with others. Once I felt more comfortable with vocabulary and listening, I knew the next step was to speak English with real people. But at first, I was nervous. I didn't want to make mistakes. I worried people would laugh at me. But then I remembered how hard it was when I first started. I had to remind myself, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning, and it's okay. The most important thing was to try. One day, I went to the park and I saw a group of people playing basketball. I knew I had to practice speaking, so I gathered up my courage and went over to them. I said, "Can I play?" They looked at me for a moment, then smiled and said, "Sure, come join us." At first, I didn't understand everything they said, but I used the words I knew. I said, "Pass," when I wanted the ball, and "shoot," when I was ready to make a basket. Even though my English wasn't perfect, they understood me, and we had fun playing together. After that day, I made it a point to speak with someone every day. Sometimes it was a friend or a neighbor. Other times, it was a stranger I met at the store or on the bus. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. Even when I made mistakes, I wasn't afraid anymore. In fact, I started to laugh at myself sometimes. And when I didn't know a word, I'd ask, "What's that word in English?" People were always happy to help me. The more I practiced speaking, the better I got. I learned new phrases. I learned how to respond more quickly. And I felt like I was really starting to use English, not just study it. It was amazing to realize that I could now have simple conversations in English. And the more I did it, the easier it became. Step 4. I used English in different ways every day. After learning some vocabulary, practicing listening, and having simple conversations, I started using English in many different ways. I started with short stories, not just listening to them, but really focusing on how the language was used in everyday situations. I listened actively, trying to understand the deeper meaning behind the words, and I'd listen to the same story over and over until I felt comfortable with it. Next, I made a habit of watching English videos. But this time, I challenged myself to watch without subtitles. It felt like a real test, but I discovered that I could understand a lot more than I thought. When I didn't understand something, I'd pause and look it up, then keep going. But here's the key. I didn't wait for someone else to practice with me. I made sure to practice English on my own every day. I wrote journals in English, recorded myself speaking, and even talked to myself in English about my day, just to get used to thinking in the language. I also joined online groups where I could write and chat with others, and I even played video games in English. These were all low-pressure ways to keep practicing and learning. By focusing on real-life situations where I could use English, it became second nature. And most importantly, I learned to make practicing English a daily habit, no matter how small the practice was. Whether I was doing something simple like making a shopping list or having a quick chat online, every moment was an opportunity to improve. Step 5. I studied grammar to build confidence. After months of practicing listening, speaking, and learning vocabulary, I still felt like something was missing. I could communicate, but sometimes I wasn't sure if I was saying things the right way. My sentences didn't always sound as natural as I wanted them to. I started to wonder if I'd ever truly feel confident. Then, one evening, while scrolling online, I came across a grammar book that promised to make the rules of English clear and simple. I hesitated at first. Grammar had always seemed so complicated and confusing, but something told me to give it a try. I ordered the book, and when it arrived, I couldn't wait to dive in. At first, it wasn't easy. I had to relearn things I hadn't understood before, like verb tenses and sentence structure. I remember getting frustrated a few times, but I kept going. And then, one day, it clicked. I was reading through the book, and suddenly, I understood how everything fit together. The pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. To make it stick, I grabbed a notebook and started writing down important rules and new words. Every time I learned something new, I'd write it down and practice using it in sentences. The more I wrote, the more I could see my progress. I was finally able to express myself with more confidence, and I noticed that people were understanding me better. I realized that grammar wasn't something to fear. It was the key that unlocked the full potential of my English skills. It gave me the confidence I needed to speak without second-guessing myself. Now, I don't just know English. I feel like I truly understand it, and that made all the difference. Conclusion: staying consistent on the journey. Looking back, I realized that becoming fluent in English wasn't a quick or easy process. There were days when I felt frustrated, when the words just wouldn't stick, or when I was too tired to practice. But I kept going. Why? Because I knew that the payoff would be worth it. Consistency was key. Even on those days when I felt like giving up, I remembered why I started this journey in the first place. I knew that every little bit of practice was bringing me closer to my goal. And over time, the progress became clear. It wasn't just about knowing the language. It was about gaining the confidence to speak with anyone, to express myself clearly, and to connect with people all over the world. I can now understand movies, books, and conversations with ease. And most importantly, I feel comfortable speaking in English without fear of making mistakes. So if you're feeling tired or frustrated on your own journey, remember this: the road to fluency isn't always smooth, but the rewards are incredible. Keep pushing forward. The more consistent you are, the more you'll see the payoff. And trust me, one day, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. So, if you're still on your journey to fluency, remember this: every bit of progress is worth it. Don't stop. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep believing in yourself. You're getting closer to your goal every single day. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What step are you on in your English journey? Do you have any tips or challenges you'd like to share? Leave a comment below and let me know how you're working toward fluency. I'd love to hear your story and support you on your path. And please, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, in case you're just wondering, this story uses the dual coding method to improve language learning and memory. The dual coding method combines reading and listening to stories, language input, with engaging images and music. This approach activates both the left side of the brain, which processes language, and the right side, which interprets visuals and emotions. By involving both sides of the brain, this method enhances learning and helps with long-term memory retention. I hope you like it.